For those who've just joined us, I'm Lee Oden, CEO of Top Rank Marketing, and we're here in our New York studios for the Epic Global Marketing Day. We're already 14 and a half hours into our 24-hour broadcast. For the next 9 hours or so, we're going to continue to bring you great insight and tips from some of the top marketing practitioners in the world. Exploring the realm of voice search, I'd like you to please welcome Christi Olson, Head of Evangelism at Microsoft. I'll tell you a little bit about Christi. For over a decade, she's led in-house digital marketing teams at Microsoft, Expedia, Harry & David, and agency teams at Pointmark and Pointed. As you may be familiar, conversational AI is disrupting how consumers engage with not only brands, but with technology. And Christi's going to take us through Microsoft's 2019 Consumer Adoption of Voice Technology and Digital Assistance Report with her presentation, Global Marketing Trends, Voice Search, Let's Chat. Conversational AI's impact to search and the SERPs. Now, it's not just Christi that we have with us today. Alongside her, we have two great guest experts to answer your questions after her session. First, we have Scott Westwater, lead voice strategist at Pragmatic Digital, and we also have Lou Diamond, CEO of Thrive. Now, I'm going to tell you a little more about Scott. He's the co-founder, as I mentioned, of Pragmatic Digital and helps clients identify and solve their marketing and customer experience problems by leveraging voice technology. Lou is the CEO of Thrive, which is a company focused on helping brands become even more amazing through the power of connecting. So take it away, Christi.
Thank you, Lee. Well, I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you a little about some of the trends we've seen through voice search. And so, as you know, conversation is huge. I have a 6-month-old daughter, and conversation is the point where before she was even born, when she was in my womb, she could connect with me and my husband because she could hear our voice. Voice is that important for us, and we all crave connection. And when it comes to search, everything is changing because of voice and because of natural language processing. We're learning how to essentially re-talk to computers and re-talk to devices in order for them to understand us, because in the past we got so used to typing in words that out of order that didn't necessarily make sense. And so voice isn't here. It's not coming. It's already here today. If you haven't been using a voice device, I'd be absolutely shocked, because they're embedded into our daily lives with cell phones, with Alexas, and the digital assistants. If you want to access the report, I'm not going to have time to go through all 5 sections of the report today. You can access it here with the link you see on the screen. With that, a couple key stats that would be interesting for you is when we talk to people, we surveyed about 500 people in March to update the 2,500 people we asked in January, just making sure that we are getting directional trends happening, that 69% of people used a digital assistant in the previous 6 months. 75% of households have a digital assistant, meaning a smart speaker, either now or planning to purchase one by the end of this calendar year. And on top of that, if you think about commerce and where we're headed, v-commerce, over half of the consumers are expecting to make a purchase using their voice within the next 5 years. And that's actually expedited even faster with the adoption of Alexa. And where this is taking us from a search perspective is we're moving from actions to answers. You might recognize the search assistants on screen. They're some of the most common players you see, being Siri, Cortana, Alexa, and the Google Assistant. They really are what people are using today to engage with voice tools and technology. Now, quick story. This is my son, Roy. He's 3.5. He can't type, but he knows how to speak. And so I've seen him actually walk up to the assistant in our house and be, Alexa, order us cookies. And it took my husband and a while to figure out how were we getting so many Oreos added to our shopping cart, because he would assume I was ordering them, I assumed he was ordering them, and we had them appear all the time. People are engaging with voice on a regular and consistent basis, whether they can type or not. And you might wonder, well, when they're engaging with voice, how are they doing it today? Some of the survey findings we had is asking the different type of devices. And it might not surprise you to see car, TV, and smart speakers as the main devices. And personal assistant pretty high because it's in your phone. But when you look at the smart speaker, 52% of people using smart speakers are using what we call voice actions or voice skills. Now, as we go through this and try to discover, like, how are you asking questions, a question I started asking about 3 weeks ago is, when will my baby get her first tooth? Because she's doing a lot of the mawing on her hand. And when I ask the question, Cortana comes back with that result, answering the question. something's happening with my deck. Answering the question, showing a search result. If you click on the see more results from Bing, essentially will give you a result directly within the search window. And you can start to see where that's pulling from. So if it's pulling directly from search results, that means you have the opportunity to optimize for it. And today, roughly about 40% of spoken responses from the assistants are coming directly from the SERPs. So if you're a brand and you're trying to understand where your opportunity is, it's optimizing for featured snippets. So what I'm going to walk through now is some very quick ways you can optimize for featured snippets. Now I could spend hours going through this, but we only have 15 minutes. So with that being said, it's going to sound pretty fast. You can also reach out and download the voice report and it'll give you more information. So as you're thinking about optimizing for featured snippets, you first want to start to figure out where are the queries that you're currently ranking for on page 1 or the top 10. That's the opportunity you have to optimize your existing query sets and against the questions related to the queries for that content. Now you want to identify the questions related to those queries. Now, I will admit this, because I get this all the time since I work for Bing. We are not making voice query data available, neither are the other search engines today. So that means that you have to use other tools and you have to be able to dig in to understand where can you find it. Well, while we don't, as a search engine, offer it to you, there are a lot of tools out there you can use. One of them is Google Search Console, and Google Analytics. So if you go into your Google Analytics account, you can start to dig in to understand what are the queries happening today, filter them by conversational words and phrases and question words in order to start to see the conversational queries that exist. It's just one way you can go through. You can also do this in your ads account by pulling out your search query reports directly from either Google Ads or Microsoft Advertising. There's some formulas on the screen that you can use, and you'll want to download the deck because you won't be able to copy and paste it, that you can use to understand the query length. The queries that are conversational tend to be longer, meaning text queries on average are between 3 to 5 words. When I go into our voice data from Cortana, they tend to be between 5 to, the longest query I've seen is about 150 words. So you'll want to be able to go through and start to figure out query length. Then if you use the formula now that you see, it allows you to put in specific words and phrases and start to see the question words, which are those conversational terms that people are asking. Other areas you can go to is essentially go direct to the search results. The search engines are providing you tips and hints toward the conversational queries. So you can see that people also type in the related queries directly in the SERPs. So as you start typing a word and phrase, you'll see the conversational queries populating up. You can pull those out and use that as guidance for where you start. Another tool I like is Answer the Public because of the data visualization. You put in a STEM word and it comes back with here are all the question words and phrases, the comparison words and phrases. So it gives you an idea of where to start based on that query you're already ranking well for to understand the questions you want to answer. And it just aggregates it in a really simple, easy used way. Next, you want to figure out how do you structure your answer. And the answer structure is actually very important because right now, paragraphs and or lists tend to be the most commonly spoken answers and featured snippets. Tables, really difficult for an assistant to read it in a way that makes sense. So if you're optimizing your snippet toward one of those structured answers, you're more likely to show up in voice. And I love our Semrush actually had some really great research coming out about featured snippets. One of them explained the different types of question words and how those optimize. Next, you want to provide a straightforward answer that adds value. Now, when we talk about straightforward answers that providing value, really it is what is the question and what is the response. You only have a certain amount of characters in that space to show on a mobile device when it highlights on the mobile device. And when you think of Siri, Cortana, Alexa, Google Assistant, it's essentially the 2-breath test. Can it be said within 1 to 2 breaths? It's quick and succinct. If you're writing paragraphs and paragraphs, it's going to be too long and it's going to cut off before you get the actual answer to the consumer that's asking the question. Next, write the answers so they sound natural and spoken aloud. This seems commonplace. However, SEOs are so used to just writing and how they write is not a conversational tone. So as you think of how a digital assistant would speak that response, make it so it sounds good spoken aloud, not just written. And as I mentioned before, think about your character count. Does it fit on the screen? Because if it doesn't fit on the screen, it's going to cut off. And then finally, this one could be hours and hours worth of time. Make it easy to find. Follow your SEO best practices. Because while voice is changing everything, search optimization is search optimization. You have to be doing everything correct on your site in order to be eligible to be on page 1 and to show up as a featured snippet to begin with. So don't forget the basics of SEO, and keep on optimizing your site. Now, something that's pretty interesting that you may or may not have heard of is speakable schema markup. The WC3.org has been going through this for the last several years of developing a speakable markup that can be implemented across the board. Today, it is currently in the news beta. However, so you must be part of Google News or Bing News. However, if you remember how some of the previous things like AMP started in this same concept, and then they rolled it out from those verticals essentially globally to everything. So it starts with a small vertical to test it and make sure they get it right from how the schema is implemented to moving forward. So it essentially gives you some high level here of what you can think about from schema and how you can start to think through the adoption. You might not want to start doing the code yet, but think about it because it's coming. And then here essentially is what that would look like on page. It's hard to walk through actual coding, but you can see you essentially have the type, you have titles, you want to have your speakable selection, and then making sure that you have the right content available. So when a digital assistant says the content, you're giving them hints and tips for what to say when they're speaking out loud. Because in all reality, search is coming in to be creative mind and data, and you want to be thinking about how you engage with your customers. It's going back to the fact we're no longer thinking fully about funnel, but we're thinking about how you engage with customers almost in a flywheel so that you're getting them the right content at the right time. Now, very briefly, again, there's different type of queries that we see happening through Cortana and our Cortana data set. So I'm going to give you very brief high-level information of how you should be thinking about optimizing toward informational, navigational, and transactional queries. Some of the facts, 68% of people are using assistants today to find a quick fact. So if you're trying to optimize for a quick fact, again, it's featured snippet optimization, but think about what you can do from a knowledge graph standpoint. Think about making sure you add schema markup, it's conversational language and tone, and that your page speed. Page speed, as Google announced, the mobile first index, it's very important. So especially with voice, make sure you're focusing on that. Next, on the navigational side, if we think about what people are doing, I can't tell you at least how many times I'm personally in a car and I say, hey, find this location. So 65% of people are using voice today to get directions, and 48% of consumers are using voice today to find a business. So if you are a business in a storefront, you want to make sure that you are showing up in a directory listing. So that is Bing Places for My Business, Google Places, Google My Business, and Apple Maps, so that depending on which assistant you ask the questions to, you're showing up in that navigational window, and that your business and the correct information is always there. Location-based optimized on-site content is also very helpful because it gives more context to a geographic location, because your mobile device, if you're on one, is based on a geo-targeting. And then finally, the v-commerce side, 25% of people today are using voice to help them make a purchase. So if you're selling something and you're trying to essentially get to having the person make that purchase, an answer is the first step and an action is the next. So you have product specific content, again, your schema markup for not only voice but product content on page. Customer reviews become important because it gives more signals and more context. You might have your FAQs, conversational tone and voice. But then finally, you have voice actions and or chatbots. This is where you go from asking a question and getting to an action. So when we talk to consumers about how they're using tools and technology and what they're doing and what they do more of and less of, you can see on the screen, there's a lot of information on this slide. What they're doing less of is transactions. And the reason they're doing less transactions is complicated processes are difficult to do via voice. If you have a 6-step process, it's easy to get lost somewhere along step 4, and then you're like, oh, I have to start over all over again. This is such a pain in the tushy. Sorry, you can tell I have a 3-year-old. So you can use chatbots and voice skills to take you from answer to action. And it's this concept and idea of building your own assistant to do voice. So as we go through that, voice search is here. You need to start optimizing for it. Schema is coming, and here you can start to implement it and start thinking about how you implement it. And if you want to enable v-commerce, it's not just answering the question, it's getting to actions. So start thinking about how you can use bots and chatbots and voice skills to do that today.
Wow. That was amazing.
That fast, did you?
And that was Christi Olson, head of Evangelism at Microsoft. I want to thank you, Christi. That was a very rich presentation, and I'm sure everyone listening in has questions, and of course we have answers amongst our brain trust of experts here. So please come join that conversation and share what questions you have through the globalmarketingday.com website and the Global Marketing Day hashtag on Twitter or your preferred social channel. So let's fire off a question. I'm going to start with you, Lou. I'm wondering, How do you think brands can branch into conversational AI as part of their marketing plan?
Funny you should ask that. At Thrive, one of the key clients I'm very much intimately involved with is a company called VoiceCell. And VoiceCell is doing exactly what Christi's talking about, which she's saying is 3 years ahead, but they're doing instant voice commerce today. So they're actually being able to make a site, a commerce site, voice functioned, to be able to put a voice assistant on so you can do your shopping right then and there using the existing infrastructure of that site. Because to her point, it's the customer that's most important, and getting that brand experience at a certain site is where you want to go. Companies like Amazon and Alexa, their tools are all gearing towards pushing you not to the site, but to where you can get the item most conveniently. But brands want them to purchase on their site. VoiceCell's technology lays over that. So brands now can go to a place and highlight their brand and use a voice assistant on their site. All those tools and tips that she was describing are so true. The biggest problem that we're seeing is those multi-step transactions are really hard, because if ordering a pizza, I like 2 large pizzas and a Coke, please go to checkout is fine. But going through maybe which golf club you'd like to pick and which handedness and what shaft thickness and length and all that stuff will get people frustrated. The bottom line is this: the biggest growth today for commerce is on the mobile devices. And shopping on them right now is not so much fun.
Right.
That's where VoiceCell's stepping in, because all these other places for search are great, but what VoiceCell is about is not translating voice to text, it's voice to product. So that's where brands should be looking to try to grow and connect their brand to their customer.
Awesome. Wow, that was a timely question. Timely answer. I have Scott, I have a question for you from the live stream. So the question is, why the hype about featured snippets? I will not click on the link if I get the answer in the first SERP. There's a pain point for a lot of SEOs. How to boil potatoes, result done, no further clicks.
Well, I mean, with smart speakers especially, the thing that most people don't understand is there's one answer for one question. So if you're not the featured snippet, you don't exist if someone doesn't have a screen. Right. So that's the critical part of this whole equation, where we know featured snippets are actually being served up by Google and Bing. We know that the assistants are actually picking those up as an answer. In addition to Wikipedia and Yelp, quite frankly, which is another thing that gets a lot of brand people a little wiggy when they hear that. But because a lot of content doesn't exist in a voice capacity yet, you need to help those assistants find the right information. And the snippets are actually where that's going to be happening.
Got it. So Christi, you mentioned schema, a markup, a conversational,
yes,
I think it was.
Speakable schema.
Thank you. Are there other schema, or are there other markup formats that exist already that would support a Q&A, FAQ kind of scenario where people can give themselves a little bit of an edge in structuring information in a way that's more usable in this situation?
So it's a great question. I haven't actually thought through that before on the FAQ side. I think part of it is just understanding what is the schema features available today, especially as you're saying, like for products, selling products, like the product markup, so that when people are asking the questions, it gives more context to the search engines. It gives more context to the voice assistants. And so it's looking at the schema that exists today and leveraging it as much as possible. So if you have an event, if you have a product, if you have a service, using it. And then in terms of FAQs, you don't need to boil the ocean. You don't need to write every variation of every question that could exist. I've had these questions so many times from people like, don't do every version. Figure out what is the most frequently asked question and answer it. Essentially, how the algorithms are working today to understand what we call essentially vectors. We understand that kid and child and children are similar enough. You don't have to do every variation within there. And the assistants are getting that too.
Getting smarter. As we're getting smarter, right? So Lou, I have a question from the live stream from you. What kind of businesses are most suitable to use Google Audio Search?
It's great. Well, what's interesting in Google Audio Search is pretty good, because I know we were just talking about this before we came on air, that people want to be able to search and listen to podcasts, and people want to be able to look for certain means of where the audio content is growing. Not only is visual and video content growing at an amazing rate, which it's been for years, but the audio boom is just tremendous. As I understand it, their tool will be able to help you understand not just where text is existing, but where audio pieces are as well. So utilizing that as a platform is one of the ways to do that. Scott,
here's another question from the live stream, and this really cuts right to it. how can we use voice search to generate leads?
It's a great question, and we're all trying to figure that out right now, as a matter of fact. I think there's a lot of ways you could at least use voice search to start, really by providing answers to those common questions. And so I can see a scenario where, especially if you're a solopreneur individual where you're answering a lot of questions manually, creating a voice experience or having website content with voice answers on it is a great way to offload that so you're not manually answering those. And you can also qualify people. So at the end, you can actually say, this action is really good, I want to push them to my email list, or this is something I really want to talk to them on the phone or have them sign up in a form or whatever. So it's really thinking through those different scenarios and what makes the most sense for your organization. But quite frankly, that's one of the golden eggs. If we can figure that out, there's going to be a lot of very happy people.
Awesome. So, Christi, you mentioned tools like Answer the Public is one of my favorite. It's a category of tool I like call Answer Search Engine, right? Because Semrush has a question research tool within the Keyword Magic tool. Even BuzzSumo has a question research tool, and there are some others. And I'm wondering, as people try to use tools like that, are there other, outside of those tools, are there other data sources that you could mine for the forms or the syntax, really, of questions that people are actually asking, that they're wondering about?
So yes. So at one point in time in my life, I mentioned I worked at Harry and David, and we had a lot of phone calls coming in. So are you with a company that does a lot of calls and call center? Can you take those calls and essentially run it through natural language processing to understand the questions that are getting asked? Because that gives you such a rich stream of content for what people are asking. And that essentially could be your entire chatbot. You could create bots and skills to answer those questions. Or as Scott was mentioning, I had an auto dealership come to me because they were getting phone calls on one specific topic. So they built out pages, and then they became the featured snippet over the national website, like the national OEM website, but then they were getting phone calls from all across the country, and they're trying to figure out, what do we do now? It's like, hey, you've got the best answer out there. You beat the OEM. So the questions from your own business, from call centers, can be used in that data, in addition to search data and what you can find directly on the SERPs today.
Super. Lou, here's a question from the live stream from you. How do you think marketers could monetize voice search?
Oh. Well, no different than we've been monetizing regular search too, but I think what's really important is knowing what people are asking for. I think these questions, these great questions that people are searching for, is really important. Christi mentioned in her presentation that the average length of a search or request might be like 5 or 10 words, but a voice one might be a lot more. What was it, 150 was the max there. Being able to parse through what those keywords are is going to be really helpful. So the more voice that's captured in online platforms, the more we're going to be able to know what those questions really are, because we're actually getting lots of words together, but now we have to translate that voice into something that's meaningful. So the monetization of that is going to be, for those that are collecting that information, understanding, hey, where should I be promoting my voice when I'm saying certain things? Or maybe more importantly, what should my sites be understanding and communicating so I can draw people in? Just when you're asking those requests, you could know where to direct your advertising and marketing from.
Yeah. Super. I've got, I think, maybe one last question here from the live stream for you, Scott, and that is, can we place ads in voice search results like we can, in other search results?
Right now, no. And I don't have any insider information, but I have every confidence that it's coming. But right now, you're not really seeing the ability to place voice search ads specifically. I know Pandora is actually working on things where within like their Alexa experience, et cetera, you're able to promote other playlists and things like that within the skill. But that's really kind of a skill or an action ecosystem versus search. So I have every confidence we're going to get there, but right now it's still pretty early days. So right now, not possible, but it probably will be in the next 6 months, let's say.
Okay, super. Christi, any last takeaways? Any parting thoughts you can think of that you'd like to share?
So many. Something that I think is interesting to go on your answer on that, Scott, just for last takeaway, is right now, if somebody is, and it doesn't happen on a smart speaker, but if you're on a mobile device and you ask the question, you get the option to have a paid, to click to see more results. That has paid ads showing up, because then that clicks through to the regular search results. So today, if you are advertising on Google or on Bing, paid ads can show up for voice queries. It's not technically the voice monetization, but they do show up there. So that's where you can get a lot of really great nuggets.
Excellent. Wow, this has been great. A huge thanks to Christi Olson, Head of Evangelism at Microsoft, to Scott Westwater, Lead Voice Strategist at Pragmatic Digital, and Lou Diamond, CEO of Thrive. I think you'll agree, this discussion is definitely going to help a lot of marketers understand how to better understand and optimize for voice search, and really where the direction of voice search is going here in the future. So everyone's on social media, and I know you are, so please share your reaction to this presentation and our lively discussion through globalmarketingday.com, as well as using the hashtag globalmarketingday. Thank you very much.